Hello, world. Hello, 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 everyone. This is Louise Hicks, and I'm your host of Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour, where I come to you and I speak as the mad Black woman, and that is for motivated and determined to help and support, elevate our people, Black people, to a higher level of consciousness because we know at this point in time, there are some inappropriate behaviors within the Black community. And there's definitely a root cause. And I decided once I saw this particular interview with a professor by the name of Dr. Hassan Johnson out of Fresno State University, it just gave me some food for thought. And I started thinking, and I decided that I wanted to do a series on Black love. As I mentioned, this mad Black woman, motivated and determined, and a baby boomer. Being I'm 73, I've been around for quite some time. So I have PhD, as I like to say, and I also have a bachelor's degree from California State University, Long Beach in social work. And I do speaking engagements. I'm an author, an award winning author. So, with that being said, thank you for all of my subscribers that have been supporting me. Please share my videos, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, leave your comments because I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic that I have been uh, providing to you, which I did part one, part two, and now I'm doing part three. And there will be a part four as well as a continuation of part four because there's a lot to unpack based on this video that I saw that I shared already. And I believe it was part two that I shared the video. So I want to give you again the topic of what I'm talking about, Black love, gender war by design, the divide and conquer pill. And this particular episode, we're going to talk about winning the game and healing because in previous episodes of this Black love, gender war by design, I spoke about um, where it started. And we know there's a root cause for everything. So we have to get to the beginning. So we started in the beginning and we moved up to where we are at this point. And we're going to talk about the inappropriate behaviors. We're going to talk about leadership, the role of a husband. We're going to talk about the helpmate, the role of the wife, because we have a lot of toxic information out here. And these gender wars between Black men and women bashing one another needs to stop. There's too much of that going on. And when I saw this video with this interview with Dr. Johnson, it just made me start thinking because the video was profiling him as a Black, well, he's a Black studies professor actually at Fresno State University. And he had started this class with Black men, just to give you a little background, and then we're going to go into briefly what I want to share with you. But he started this class with males, and then some Black females came in, and then eventually he ultimately ended up with white females and Latino females who wanted to know and understand, according to them, the Black men and the families so that they could get to date athletes, particularly football and basketball players. I thought that was ironic because it appears to me if that was a Black woman talking like that, from what I've been hearing on social media from some of the Gen Xers and millennials and the Zs, they've been talking about Black women being gold diggers and angry and so forth without giving any historical information of these inappropriate behaviors. So I'm going to bring in Dr. Claude Anderson on this video because he's going to explain some of the inappropriate behaviors and the systemic racism behind a lot of this. And this is what a lot of you do not understand because you don't do your research and you're just making accusations against one another and bashing one another instead of uplifting. And that is why I decided to do this because we need to uplift and stop bashing. There's too much of that going on. And as an ethnic group, we are the only ones out here bashing, bashing, bashing. The men bashing the women bashing the men. And a lot of this has come out of this hip hop. And we know why that's done, but you don't hear the hip hoppers bashing any other women except Black women. But we have to take some accountability. We have to take some responsibility of our own behavior because we cannot blame slavery on everything that's happening today, even though we know racism still exists. However, there are solutions to you to elevate, for you to elevate yourself in spite of the racism. I know because I have done that. And I'm going to continue to do uplifting, upbuilding um, videos about some of my experiences being 73 and the things I've encountered and give you information on what I did to combat these various situations, racial discrimination that I encountered, not only in the workforce, but in housing and just everyday life. So please, again, I'm Louise Hicks, your host here, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. And I thank you again for supporting, subscribing. Please continue. Please share. Also, give it a like, comments, because I welcome your comments because we all can grow together. So what I'm going to do first, I have 3 videos I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to share one with you first by Dr. Claude Anderson, who is well known within the Black community with many of the Black people, I should say, many of our kin folks. He's well known with some, he's not. That's why I would like to introduce you to him because he has so much to offer. He's written multiple books, being Black Labor, White Wealth, that you should read, Powernomics. I would advise you to read. I read Black Labor, White Wealth back in the 1990s, and I've read Powernomics more recently, not the entire book, but I do intend to finish it. But I've been through it, most of it anyhow. And I've the Black History Reader. He has so many books. You'd be amazed at the number of laws that white supremacists put on the books to keep us as an underclass, and it's all by design. And this Black love is all design as well to divide us and keep us as an underclass. And until we get an understanding as to why, we're going to be stuck. And that's for sad and drowning. And we're going to be SOS. And that's for stuck on stupid because we're perishing for lack of knowledge. And in spite of what many have shared with you, especially with these saying that Black love is dying for Black women, that's a myth. And we have to start expelling these myths. And about Black women being angry, that's a myth. It's not that Black women are angry, it's pain. And I'm going to share with you why in this particular video. It's because we have to start calling out people that are giving you our narrative on what and how we are, because you haven't lived in my body or any Black person's body for that matter. So, how can you tell us who we are? And we don't need anybody to validate us. I was validated from the day I was born as Louise Hicks. I was validated. So I don't need anybody to validate me, as a lot of you are sitting around thinking that you need someone to validate you. No, you don't. You just need to do your due diligence and know who you are and know the root cause. Know about that Willie Lynch syndrome and the making of a slave, because that is what has created this tug of war between Black men and Black women. However, I can assure you that most Black men are married to Black women. Most Black women, of course, are married to Black men. And I share some statistics on that. And you have to remember to do your research so you will understand and know what the situation is in these cases where they the folks want to give you a narrative that Black men no longer want Black women. That's not the case. And statistically speaking, I can tell you, based on a 2021 statistic, Black men, excuse me, were 85% married to Black women. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau. 2021 is when this was brought out, that 85% of Black men are married to Black women, and 93% of Black women are married to Black husbands, so Black men. So don't let anybody deceive you in order to keep us divided and conquered, because that's what they want to do, keep you as an underclass. So let me let you listen to Dr. Claude Anderson, because he has some very, very important information to impart to help us to grow together, to unite collectively so that we can elevate ourselves spiritually, economically, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, socially, physically, all of those. And I may have repeated a couple, but we have to start working on ourselves. Nobody is going to help you to empower you but you and us, as we come together collectively so that we can build our own schools for our children. We can build uh, food industries. We can build distribution centers, and we can build uh, medical institutions for ourselves, because we need that. And the reason we need that is because of systemic racism that exists, in spite of what some may say, some of the politicians, one being your vice president that's up for election with your president. And I'm going to do something on that real soon. So stay tuned. I've done past podcasts on it, but I'm going to do one real soon about the Jim Crow era and so forth, because there's a lot that can be unpacked based on what has happened lately within the news about Jim Crow and some politicians. So, and not politicians. We'll be talking about that as well. So let me share this video with you where Dr. Claude Anderson gives some vital information that we need to educate ourselves on, because that's a lot of the problem why we're perishing for lack of knowledge, because we aren't educating ourselves or our children as to who we are. And here we go.
Problem we're going to talk about this morning is the inappropriate behavior pattern of Black folk. Those are the only two problems you have. I don't care what anybody else talks about in America. It's not worthwhile wasting your time. The problem in America is not drug abuse, crime, low-income housing, public housing, food stamps, welfare, teenage pregnancy. Those are symptoms of a problem. The symptoms are the fact that you don't own and control anything to run you and control your lives. That's the problem. And the second thing is inappropriate behavior pattern. And before I get into inappropriate behavior patterns, let me define that for you. Now, I'm in current day terms, I might call it the Rodney-King syndrome. It's pretty familiar to most of you. That's when somebody pulls you out of a car, breaks your jaw, breaks 3 ribs, cracks 2, knocks out 2 teeth, gives you a concussion, breaks your wrist, breaks your kneecap, and stomps you, and you say, why can't we all get along? That is inappropriate behavior. Or if I'm in Detroit, Michigan, as when I was there functioning as an assistant police commissioner during the riots, and I was working on riot possibilities and techniques in the city, I get a call down by some people who had been involved in a couple of murders. And he said, look, I didn't have anything to do with it, Anderson. I just there, I witnessed it. I said, what happened? Well, you see, they'd had a disturbance in Detroit, Michigan, and the police broke into a motel and found 2 black boys in there with some white girls. And they didn't like that, even though they were in a black neighborhood. They had paid for the room. It was their right and privilege to be wherever they wanted to be. It was between them and God. But the police officers were white. They were very disturbed about this. So what they did, they took those 2 boys on a Friday, and they beat them all day Friday. And they beat them all day Saturday. Then by Sunday, they had gotten tired of beating them. They said, well, we just go ahead and kill them. And so one of the officers picked up a rifle, and hit the oldest black kid in the back of the head with a rifle. And the kid was only about 22 years of age. Hit him so hard that it knocked one eye completely out of socket and bulged the other eye and broke the rifle stock. And the poor kid fell on his knees and crawled around and found the broken stock of the rifle, and on his knees held it up and apologized for having a hard head. That is inappropriate behavior. The question should have been, why are you brutalizing me and killing me? What have I done to you? And so that's the kind of inappropriate behavior. It's what we've been systematically programming to displaying as black folk in a very highly competitive society.
Okay, let's stop sharing, because he really gave some highly important information that goes to mental health. But it's not healthy. It's an illness, mental illness. Because if you were mentally healthy, this inappropriate behavior would not be existing. So it's a mental illness. And as Black people, we have been programmed systematically from slavery, being enslaved. And I'm going to give you some information about that to discuss this mental illness. Let's go back to a psychiatrist by the name of Benjamin Rush. A lot of this started with psychiatry. He is known as the father of psychiatry. However, it was brutal for Black people. This man was born 1746, died about 1813, I guess. Benjamin Rush. A lot of you probably have never heard of him because you're not doing your due diligence, you're not reading. And what Dr. Claude Anderson is talking about is mental illness because of how we were deemed from being brought over here from Africa and just treated worse than animals. That's enough to give anybody a mental illness when you aren't healed from it. And that's what he's talking about, mental illness. And let me share another person with you. And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because we will probably be revisiting this because I have a panel that's going to be coming on. And we're going to be revisiting this because I can't give it all right now because I don't want to spend too much time in it because I want us to talk about it with the panel that's very familiar. One being Minister Fred Shaw, who's been on my show before. And the other one is another, we're all baby boomers, by the way, too. So don't think us baby boomers have laid down and we are dead, because we're not. Not all of us. Some of us have laid down, but not all of us. There are some of us out here like myself who I said I've coined myself as the mad Black woman, motivated and determined to support and help elevate my people to a higher level of consciousness. Being 73, I've seen a lot, I've experienced a lot. So I have a lot to share, believe me, to help you to better understand who we are and why these inappropriate behaviors exist that you just heard from Dr. Claude Anderson. One being this doctor I just mentioned to you, Dr. Benjamin Rush, and how he's I said cloned. He's coined as the father of psychiatry. Now, let me tell you about this other one who came along at 1793 to 1863, Samuel Cartwright, a psychiatrist as well. He came up with, for Black slaves, a name. You know how they give you these names, but if you're not familiar with this book they have where they just pull something out of the hat and these psychiatrists will give it a name. So he gave a name for slaves that were running away from all of the atrocities, the rapes, the beatings, the hangings, having events where they call pick a nigger, and they would take Black folks and hang them from a tree, and they'd call it pick a nigger. That's where picnic came about from. This is how evil these white supremacists were, because they felt Black people were inhuman, didn't feel no pain. So he called this disease that he coined drapetomania, which was put on slaves who attempted to run away. Some did get away because they were tired of the brutality against them, making them work for free. And then they have the audacity now to say, we don't deserve to get reparations, because some are saying uh, they didn't do it, their ancestors did, but you're benefiting from it. And I have another podcast I'm going to be talking about that on too, because I came from California, and it's about what this assemblywoman said in California. I'll be talking about that too, about reparations. I'm going to give her some food for thought and help her to put her diaper back on, because she is definitely not educated on Black people. And that's what is appalling to me too, when so many of these people want to define who we are. But you haven't lived in a Black person's body in America through chattel slavery or even through enslavement now, 2024. You have not lived it. White privilege is real. So this man, Cartwright, Samuel Cartwright, psychiatrist now, and he's going to create a disease for Black people. How would he feel if he was in their shoes and he was running away? I guarantee you he wouldn't feel that it was a disease. He'd be trying to escape as well. And hanging still exists today, because there were two Black men during the pandemic or scamdemic, whatever you want to call it, that they found hung in California. And you think these things only happen in the South? I'm telling you they don't, because I've lived in California practically all my life. And the first time I was called a nigger by a white person was in the state of California, even though I came from Louisiana. They called me a nigger to my face. white people, a white person, and even a little child, when I was a teacher's aide, said her mother told her that people like me were niggers. And she didn't know what she was saying. She would come to me every day, tell me she loves me, hugs me. It's how you treat people, regardless of the color of their skin. You should be treating people the way you want to be treated. But this stuff is still going on. And we're talking 21st century now. And I have many stories I could tell, but I'm not going to tell them right now. I'm going to move on and tell you about this other one. And I talked about in that first video about some of these black men saying black women are angry. They really don't know what they're talking about because that they've been programmed to believe that black women are angry. Black women are hurt. Black men are hurt. So that's why I'm saying we need to stop bashing. There was a doctor back in 1813 to 1883 by the name of James Marion Sims, so-called father of gynecology. I call him the butcher because of what he did to black women. And you need to understand the history. Your historical facts are important for you to understand why this gender war is existing today. And it's gotten worse because it wasn't like that back when I was growing up. Black people didn't bash one another the way black men and women are doing now, these Gen Xers and these millennials and Gen Zs, because you guys are not, you don't have an understanding of the root cause of all of this. So you need to go and do some due diligent research so you can understand the topic that I'm talking about today, how to win the game. Because all of this tug of war was created to keep you as an underclass. And all of this toxic talk out here that some of these black people have these podcasts and many of you are following them, you're not uplifting. You're not building because you don't understand that black people right now economically are at the bottom of the barrel, and we've been over here longer than any other ethnic group. And I can guarantee you and assure you that black people were together and did things coming out of slavery in spite of what the circumstances were, because we worked together. And when I say we, I'm talking about my ancestors. And some of us are working together now, as Dr. George Fraser said, connecting the dots. Black people built towns. Tulsa, Oklahoma wasn't the only one. Do your research. YouTube University. But they were destroyed. Multiple towns were built, but destroyed by economic envy. White people could not stand to see black people elevate themselves in spite of the odds. Coming out of slavery with nothing, were told you were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. Reparations are long overdue for black people. Our ancestors labored, blood, sweat, and tears. And it's so sad that some people are out here hating still. And reparation can be given to everybody except black people, and that's by design. So wake up, because a lot of us are sad, and that's my acronym for stuck and drowning. And a lot of us are SOS, stuck on stupid. And that's not saying that you don't have the capability, because we do. We are a highly brilliant, melanated people. But you've been indoctrinated to believe that you're not. And many of you have bought into it. And until we have that renewing of the mind and have a change in our mindset, we're going to stay stuck. And we shouldn't have to. And we shouldn't. We have to take accountability and responsibility for ourselves. so that we can empower ourselves and empower one another and not be stuck, enslaved without the visible chains, because that's where a lot of us are today. And that goes for baby boomers, millennials, Gen Xers, Gen Zs. And we have to change that narrative so that these alpha don't come up that way. It's about us teaching our children, educating our own children. We have to do that. We need our own educational institutions because these public schools are not going to educate you. And they brought about segregation and integration, rather. Integration did us more harm than good. I'm speaking from my own experience and what I experienced as a child growing up on Cooper Road, USA, in Shreveport, Louisiana, where we had Black folks coming together, looking out for one another, protecting one another. It was a village of caring, love, and concern. You could leave your house and leave your door wide open, and we would protect one another. That's not happening today on Cooper Road, USA, because I visited there not too long ago. And we got to stop the killing of one another. That's all by design. Just like this by design that I'm talking about now. And again, I'm Louise Hicks, your host of this podcast, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. Please subscribe, share, because that's how we learn. We have to share information that's uplifting and building. Share it, thumbs up, give it a like. Let's continue to sharpen one another's tools. That's so important. And this doctor here, James Marion Sims, as I said, the butcher who is coined the father of gynecology, would experiment on Black slaves without anesthesia. And at that time, there was anesthesia, but they felt Black women didn't feel any pain. Oh, we're less than animals. We don't feel pain. And that's why I say stop bashing. Learn your history. Black women are not angry. It's pain. It's about healing, having therapy with a qualified therapist so that you can talk about the root cause. Because anytime there's a situation, that has to be a cause. And we have to learn about conflict resolution. That's important. Communicating with one another. Stop the bashing, because that's what the folks want you to do, because they want to see you kept as an underclass, and they want to divide and conquer us as a Black family structure. Margaret Sanger was going around in the Black churches and the ministers were letting her speak. If you don't know who Margaret Sanger is, look her up and educate yourself. And the Black preachers were letting her come in there because this woman was advocating genocide upon us, wanted to wipe us off the face of the earth. So we need to know our history and stop allowing other folks to tell us who we are, because they don't know who we are and they don't care who we are. We have to care who we are and know who we are. That's important. So look these people up. Look up Samuel Cartwright. Look up James Marion Sims. Look up what's his name? Benjamin Rush. Look these people up and learn your history and see why Black people have been generationally traumatized. And that's why I'm doing this third part of Black Love, Gender War by Design, the Divide and Conquer Pill, winning the game and healing, because we can win the game. If you know your history and you start loving yourself, because a lot of this is self-hate. And it's self-hate because by design, the divide and conquer. But I just gave you the stats on the marriages between Black men and women, but they want you to believe differently. And they are the reason that a lot of Black men and women are having this tug of war. It goes a lot back to welfare, where the black men couldn't get a job. They were taken out of the home. The welfare people would come out. I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard. Come out to your house, look for men's clothing. They didn't want the fathers in the home. They wanted to emasculate the black man and put the black woman out front. So a lot of these situations with the black woman, she had no choice but to take the lead and do what she had to do to protect and take care of her children. Because these white social workers would come out, or welfare workers, to your home. They'd line the kids up, look at the kids, then they'd go and look in your closet, look in your house, look under your bed, try to see if there's any signs of a man's clothing there. This is how brutal these people were, these white supremacists, all by design. So stop allowing this divide and conquer to stay stuck in your brain. Use your sound mind and do some due diligence so you can see that this stuff is by design. They don't want us to be together. They want us to be an underclass. When I grew up, most black families were together in the 50s and 60s during Jim Crow. And Jim Crow ended, I believe, in about 1964 or 65. And it started in the late 1800s, 1873 or somewhere back then, 83, somewhere back then, Jim Crow started. So I lived this life. So I'm telling you from how Black people lived. Don't buy into the lies that you're hearing about the Jim Crow era and how Black people were this and that and that and that, the negativity. Black people were built towns and cities, thriving. But guess what? White supremacists, due to economic envy, tore them down. Many of those towns that Black people built are now underwater as lakes because of hate and evil. So know your history, learn your history, and that way, once you know better, as Maya Angelou says, you do better. That's what Maya Angelou said, and I agree with her. If you know better, you should do better. That's what she said. And that word should is there because you should do better when you know better. We shouldn't have all this bashing. And I'm just sick and tired of it, hearing it and seeing it. And all the followers following this toxic social media stuff. Follow the people that are upbuilding and uplifting, the positive minded people, using that melanin in their bodies to elevate to a higher level of consciousness. That's why I am this mad Black woman helping to elevate our people to a higher level of consciousness because we need it. We've gone backward. And I'm telling you what I know because I've been here 73 years. We have gone backward, and a lot of it has to do with this rap music and all of these inappropriate behaviors that Dr. Claude Anderson talked about. So with that said, I'm going to share another video with you, and I may not share the entire video, but I'm going to share part of it from Dr. Miles Monroe about the role of a husband, because a lot of us are having these tug of wars because we don't know our role. We have not been given that knowledge. So let me share another video with you. Give me a moment here. Let me, before I share, let me go and find the one I want to share with you. Here we go.
I want you to write the word husband down. We got to be careful with this. I was looking at this word the other day, and I realized that the power of a man in the family is the key to the family. Matter of fact, the word husband is from two words put together. Write them down. It's the word house bond, one who bonds the house together. If you are the husband, your job is like glue. You're supposed to glue the whole family together. You are responsible for gluing the family together. You are the houseborn. That's why they call you a father. The word father is the Hebrew word Abba. It means source and sustainer. Not just the sauce, you got to sustain what you're sauced. That's my baby. Good. Are you paying for the school of that baby? Are you feeding that child? Oh, by the way, did you know that women are your baby too? God did not take women from the soil. He went inside the male and pulled out a female. That's what I like about God. In other words, the male came out of the male, but he built the male to make it a female. So a real female is a female because she has a womb to carry the fetus. You are a female if you got a fetus capacity. So you could break your wrists, wear your earrings, have a ponytail, but if you ain't got no womb, you are a brother. Your job is to sustain your baby. The woman came out of man, not man out of woman. Paul was clear. That means the female in your life is your baby. That's why it's natural for a man to call his wife baby. It's in your genes. She's your baby. That means you must feed her, clothe her, protect her, counsel her, provide for her, feed. You got to do everything for her. Why? She's your baby. No, all you want is sex. That's your problem. The house should be bonded together by the house bond. The family is like a business corporation. The father is the president. The wife, vice president. The children, the board members. Neighbors, clients. Now, look at those words carefully. You are what? The president. That means you preside. You don't own or control. You preside over the house. Who's your wife? Vice president. That means you don't act without getting advice from your wife as well. Oh, I'm in trouble now, see? And your children are on what? The board. That means you inform them of what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you're going to bond the house together, it has to be a corporate effort. Management of the home is the greatest test of a man's leadership. What did I say? I can't hear you. Say it again. Management of the home is the greatest test of a man's leadership. That's why the Apostle Paul says, look, if you want to come into God's house and sit in this pulpit, he says, first you must manage your own home well. There's some men who want to build a house of God, but they can't build their own house. There are men who counsel other people's kids but lose their own kids. Some men spend more time with other women than with their wives, and they call it counseling. Y'all don't get quiet on me because I'm going to walk right down there and talk to some of y'all. There are wives who need to make an appointment to see their husband. Is your wife one of them? She wants to see you. You haven't talked to her for months. You are the manager of that home. And this is why it's important for you as a man to understand that the family is your most sacred responsibility.
Okay, we'll stop sharing that one. As you heard, we have to learn to define our roles, what the role is of a husband, because we want to keep our Black families together so that we can raise our children to be together. to be able to be accountable and take responsibility, as you heard there, what the role is of a husband. And a lot of us, when we get married, husbands and wives don't know the role that they should be taking in order to bring a cohesive family together that stays together and work together, as he said there. And that's so important because each one has a role. And that father is the protector and the leader of that household. And the mother and the father should be communicating, working together, and guiding their children. That's why it's so important that we educate our own children too, because they're not going to get that in the school system, I'm telling you. And that bond he talked about, the source and the sustainer, those are so important. So now let's look at, because he's given you so much, so let's look at the role of the wife as a helper, because she's supposed to be the helpmate. So let me find that video.
Possible you? You ain't got no education.
Here we
You
go.
don't
I'm
have the
going to
right
start
contacts.
over.
You don't have. A man is a protector. A woman is an encourager. This is very important. The female at the beginning, Adam had a woman who was his helper. When a man begins to share his dream with you, you need to encourage him. You ever heard a man talk his vision to his wife, and she says, "That's impossible. You? You ain't got no education. You don't have the right contacts. You don't have the right associations. You don't have the right personality." And by the time she's finished with him, his dream is dead. She's supposed to be a helper, supposed to encourage the man, even when it seemed impossible. If anyone's supposed to cheer her on, it's supposed to be her. Most men are afraid to go home. So they stop at the pub. They spend hours with the brothers who encourage them to build their courage up to go home to face the one who destroys them. You wonder why your husband won't come home much? And he comes home after you're sleeping? It's safe then. This ain't funny. Some of you wondering, sometimes you wonder why your husband likes to be in church all the time? Church is safe. Some men work late because home is too dangerous. No encouragement home. Where you been? Why you late? Why you wear that shirt? I don't like them shoes. Why your hair so bald? What's going on with your life? Why you so stupid? You're just like your daddy. You're just like your brother. By the time the guy is finished, let me get out of here. So Peter says, go on the roof and sleep. You're supposed to make your home such a comfortable place that he can't wait to get home. All the men say amen. Sometimes the most dangerous place for a husband is his house. Because all he hears is negative, discouragement. I tell you, a good woman makes a man find it hard to go to work in the morning. He runs to the door, runs back to her, runs to the door, and says, honey, you just make it so hard. He runs to the car, he drives down the street, he reverses back home, comes back, he goes to the work, says, I'll be right back, y'all, goes back home. That's how you got to make it hard for any woman to stop him on the way. My wife is a dangerous woman, man. Ladies, you ain't got a chance with this handsome guy. You ain't got a chance. My wife do me so good that when I see you, you don't exist. My home is my haven. I can't wait to get home. She makes the home so safe from all the pressure out there. Encourage her.
Okay, took me a while to find it, but we got the woman's, how the woman is supposed to be the helper. And again, I'm Louise Hicks, your host of this podcast, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. And I decided to do this podcast, as I told you, because of the video I had seen with the professor at Fresno State. And I was inspired to do this series. And this is the part 3 of Black Love, Gender War by Design, the Divide and Conquer Pill, winning the game and healing. And this is how we win the game, by having those different roles, as Dr. Miles Monroe pointed out about the husband's role, the wife's role, and the wife is the helper. And once we realize that, we will have much more loving relationships, and we can bring our family structure together, because Black people were more together back in the 50s and 60s than they are now in terms of marriages and relationships. I lived back then, and I'm living here, and I'm telling you what I know because I lived it, not speculating. So in spite of what you might hear some say, like Al Sharpton was arguing with Byron Donald about this, and Byron was right about that. And I'm going to do a podcast on that as well, because we need to start calling these people out, no matter who they are and no matter what kind of degrees you have, because you can have a PhD and that doesn't mean that you are well informed and that you are putting out the right message, because all of us can be wrong and make mistakes in what we're putting out here. Because some of us are reading and we're listening to people that don't have their best interests at heart, nor do they have the information that they are providing you with that is accurate information. So we have to be careful who we're following if we want to build and uplift our Black community, in which we know is well needed. And it's intentionally by design to keep you as an underclass. And when Dr. Miles Monroe brought that out, he did bring it out very well, because it happens in families, not just Black families. As you saw in the video, there were other ethnic groups. That happens in all families. However, we know that Black people are tend to be the most hated people on the planet, particularly here in America. All the racism, all the white privilege, and all this stuff is by design to keep us as an underclass. And it's not that we're ignorant, we aren't. It's just that a lot of us are perishing for the lack of knowledge because of the narratives that have been put on us, where we have been indoctrinated with information to mislead us intentionally to keep us as an underclass. But once you start learning the root cause and about post-traumatic slave syndrome, that Dr. Joy DeGruy wrote this book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, PTSS, which I'm so happy because she gives a lot of information on YouTube University. You can look her up, Dr. Joy DeGruy, Joydegruy. There's so much information from this psychologist that you can get and learn. And read the Willie Lynch letter and the making of a slave, because that will give you insight on the root cause of all the inappropriate behaviors that Dr. Claude Anderson spoke about. That just didn't come out of the clear. Those are symptoms of systematic racism. That's what they are. that he talked about. And it's still happening today. So we need to be well aware of our own history being taught from us, not from somebody who does not have your best interests at heart. And by the way, Dr. Miles Monroe was killed in an airplane crash. I believe it might have been 2014, if I'm not mistaken. He, his wife, and his daughter, among some others, were killed in a plane crash. And like I said, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 2014. And he was just he was speaking all over the world, internationally, being heard. One of the most wanted speakers throughout the world was Dr. Miles Monroe, that you just heard from, about the role of a husband and the role of a wife as a helper. And once we get those things ingrained in us and start using our brilliant melanated minds, that sound mind, and exercising that power, exercising that love for one another, but first and foremost, love for yourself, because a lot of us don't even love ourselves because we've been so indoctrinated and brainwashed as to who we are. We don't know who we are. We don't know our history. And we've been brainwashed, bamboozled, as Malcolm X said, bamboozled. That's what has happened to us, and it's been generational. That's why I started the series from the beginning and talking about the generational trauma. And until we get healing and that mental health aspect that Dr. Claude Anderson talked about, we will remain stuck and sad, which is stuck in drowning, and SOS, stuck on stupid. So as a baby boomer, 73, the mad Black woman, motivated and determined, I will continue to do everything within my power to help to elevate and support my people to a higher level of consciousness, because I was raised in the 50s and 60s with the understanding that charity starts at home. So your leadership starts within your home, with your father and your mother. And we did have more fathers and mothers in the home back in the 50s and 60s than what we have now. A lot of households now are headed by single Black women. And that's by design. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not, because it's by design. It's intentional to emasculate the Black male and take them out of the home. Put the Black woman on welfare and make her become helpless. And a lot of Black women I've heard say, I don't need a man, or they're saying, I can do bad all by myself. And I look at it like this: if you're a single woman, you should be thinking, I can do good by myself. If you are unfortunate enough, due to whatever circumstance, it could be death. Some women are single not because of the father leaving the home. Some women are single because of death in the family. The father died, or maybe he was killed. So we got to start using our critical thinking skills. And I hear some Black women say, well, I make more money than him. So what? It shouldn't matter who makes the most money, because you're supposed to work as a unit, as one. So whoever makes the most money, it should not matter to you. All that should matter is you have a loving man in that home that is following the leadership skills that Dr. Miles Monroe laid out. He laid it out, the role of the husband. He's your protector. So stop bashing one another, because I'm highly disappointed at these Gen Xers and Gen Zs and the millennials who are doing that. And it's not all of them, because there are some Black millennials, Gen Xers, and Zs that are doing an exceptional job of knowing who they are, because they know who they are. And that's the key to it, to know who you are and to love yourself and not let anybody tell you that some other person got to validate you. No, 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 no. That is not the case. So we have to recognize and realize, and the husbands are the ones that create the bond. And I know families that when I was a child coming up, even though I came from a divorced family, I know most of the people I knew were in the home. And a lot of times these divorces that did happen back in the 50s and 60s, that was all about systemic racism, because a lot of the men back then couldn't find jobs and so forth. And sometimes they took that frustration out on their family, or they would leave because some of them felt ashamed that they couldn't find a job to take care of their family. And sometimes those kind of things would cause friction. And because of post-traumatic slave syndrome, a lot of them just felt that it was best to leave rather than stay. And not, I shouldn't have said a lot, because most men stayed regardless back in the 50s and 60s. They stayed with their families and did what was necessary to take care of them legally. Some of them just took on whatever little job they could find, odd jobs or whatever. They had crops that they could raise the food, because we raised most of our food. You didn't have to go to the grocery store and buy, and people are talking about organic food. We grew up on that, and people were healthier then. You didn't find all the obesity and high blood pressure and diabetes and all of that, because it's also important on our physical health. We have to look at the mentally, emotionally, physical, intellectual. We have to look at all of that. Economics, we got to look at everything, all aspects of our lives. So I just wanted to come in because I was so disappointed when I saw this video with the professor. And I wish I could speak with that professor to see what he was imparting in that class, really. I'd like to know, because I believe he's probably maybe a Gen Xer or a millennial. And I tell you, I grew up in the 50s and 60s in the South, and go to California and find out. That's a myth too. People telling you, oh, the Southerner, they're this and another. It's no different. People are people. I encountered some of the worst racism in California. And I left and went there at 18 and went to California State University, Long Beach, and went to Long Beach City College first. And I'm going to have a video that I'm going to be up and coming about that. So with that said, I just wanted to go ahead and do the part 3. And there's a part 4 that's coming up with, as I mentioned, Minister Fred Shaw and Lily Bell, who has her own podcast as well. And we'll talk more about that when we get to part 4. She can share it with you. You can go and listen to her podcast also, because she has a podcast too. So I thank you all. Again, Louise Hicks, your host of this podcast, Aim to Purpose Spiritual Empowerment Hour. And I'm the Mad Black woman, motivated and determined to help and support to elevate my people, Black people, to a higher level of consciousness. And as a 73 years old baby boomer, I'm not done yet. There is more to come. And please share this video, share the whole series and the panel discussion that's upcoming, part 4. And leave your comments, thumbs up, give it a like, and we'll be back with more. And as I leave, I always let you know, your power lies within you. Let it loose. And I love to share this scripture and tell you about flipping the script. 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power. That word power is first. Now you got to have some power. That'll give you the love you need, your self-love. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, because your destiny is your command and you need to take control of it. And always remember, your power lies within you. Let it loose. And thank you all so much again. Make sure I got this scripture right. Yeah, that's 2 Timothy 1:7. I always keep it near me. I keep a lot of stuff near me, like speak up and speak out. I always do that too. And with that said, again, your power lies within you. Let it loose. And I'll see you in the next video. Much love. Please subscribe, share, thumbs up, and give it a like. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Much love too.